Her husband shoved her suitcase onto the sidewalk at exactly 11:43 p.m., right in front of the neighbors who pretended not to look. 8 months pregnant. No coat, no purse, no phone, no money. Just his baby growing inside her, and a thin plastic bag carrying 3 maternity dresses she had bought herself with the last $47 she secretly had left. Then he locked the door. The porch light clicked off a second later. And just like that, Dexter Osei walked back inside to the woman waiting on his couch, as if his wife of 7 years had never existed. Abeni stood there frozen while rain hammered the pavement around her. For a moment, she honestly thought he would come back out, that maybe this was another one of his cruel little mind games. But the curtains never moved again. So she walked 9 long blocks through cold October rain on Beatty's Ford Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. Cars splashed dirty water against her bare legs.
Welcome to Wild Shadow Tales. We do not just tell stories, we make you feel them. Smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell because trust me.
Wind cut through her soaked dress like knives. By the 4th block, her feet were bleeding. By the 7th, contractions had started tightening low in her stomach hard enough to make her stop breathing for seconds at a time. And then she saw it. One porch light, still glowing at nearly midnight. Abeni climbed the steps with shaking hands and knocked once. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time, trying not to collapse. The woman who opened the door looked to be in her late 60s. Silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Housecoat. Slippers. Sharp eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Her name was Willa Mae Saunders. She looked first at Abeni's swollen belly, then at her bare feet, then at the plastic bag hanging from her trembling fingers. And something in Willa Mae's expression changed instantly. "Come inside," she said quietly. No questions. Not one. She wrapped towels around Abeni's shoulders and feet, sat her at the kitchen table, and placed hot ginger tea in front of her while rain battered the windows hard enough to rattle the glass. The old stove hissed from a cracked burner in the back, filling the kitchen with warmth that felt almost unreal after the nightmare outside. The clock read 12:07 a.m. Abeni couldn't stop shaking. Not because she was cold, because deep down, she was starting to realize this night had not happened suddenly. Dexter had been planning it. For months, maybe longer. Dexter Osei was the kind of man people trusted immediately. Senior property manager at Vanguard Crown Holdings in Uptown Charlotte. 11 commercial buildings under his supervision. Nearly $190,000 a year. Black Audi Q7. Tailored suits. Country club weekends. Perfect smile. Calm voice. Expensive watches. The kind of man who made everyone feel important while quietly destroying people behind closed doors. For years, Dexter had been feeding everyone the same story. His wife was lazy. His wife contributed nothing. His wife depended on him for everything. He told coworkers, friends, golf partners, even strangers at barbershops. And the terrifying part? People believed him. What nobody knew was that Abeni had carried him financially when his career was collapsing years earlier. She paid rent, typed his reports, entertained his clients, cooked dinners for business associates until midnight while he accepted compliments like he had done the work himself. She built the foundation beneath the life he now claimed she did not deserve to stand in. And tonight, he finally erased her from it. Or at least, he thought he had. What Dexter didn't know was that Willa Mae Saunders had worked inside Vanguard Crown Holdings for nearly 2 decades as a housekeeper. She knew exactly who he was. She had watched him walk those halls like a king. She had overheard the cold phone calls, seen the way assistants flinched around him, heard him joke about his wife to other men as if Abeni were some burden he regretted picking up. But that wasn't the reason Willa Mae opened the door. The real reason was far stranger. Years earlier, Willa Mae had seen Abeni's face before. Not in person, in a photograph. An old photograph taped inside a basement locker in Building 7 on North Tryon Street. The locker had belonged to a woman named Chidinma Iduk, Abeni's grandmother. And according to company rumors, Chidinma had left Vanguard Crown carrying a secret important enough to ruin careers. Abeni had no idea. To her, her grandmother was simply the woman who raised her in a tiny Maryland apartment filled with the smell of cayenne pepper and simmering stew. The woman who taught her how to cook before she could even reach the stove properly. Jollof rice rich enough to silence a room. Groundnut soup layered with smoke, spice, and something sweet nobody could identify. Slow-braised stews that took hours and demanded patience. Every recipe carried memory inside it. Every meal carried love. Then Shadinma died suddenly in 2013 after suffering a stroke in her kitchen. And after the funeral, Abeni stopped cooking completely. Not because she forgot how, because every recipe hurt too much to touch. Back in the kitchen, Willa May quietly poured more tea while studying the young woman sitting across from her. She knew things Abeni didn't yet understand. Dangerous things, but she stayed silent. For now. Finally, she asked only one question. When's the baby due? 5 weeks, Abeni whispered. Willa May nodded slowly, then disappeared down the hallway before returning with a lavender-scented nightgown, wool socks, and a heavy blanket. The room at the end of the hall is yours tonight, she said. Sleep first. We'll talk tomorrow. Abeni tried to thank her, but emotion closed her throat. Willa May gently raised a hand. Tomorrow. That night, for the first time in nearly a week, Abeni truly slept. No nightmares. No fear. No waking up to Dexter, silently standing in the bedroom doorway, watching her in the dark. Something he had started doing months earlier. No sound of locks clicking from the outside of the bedroom door. Just silence. Heavy, deep silence. But while Abeni slept, Willa May remained awake in the kitchen until nearly 2 in the morning with the stove light glowing above her. And then she made a phone call. One call. To a woman named Pauline Achebe in the records department at Vanguard Crown Holdings. Pauline knew where every buried file was hidden, which signatures were forged, which documents had disappeared, which executives had paid money to keep certain secrets from surfacing. Willa May asked her one question, and Pauline's answer changed everything. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen table as Abeni finally told the full truth. 7 years of marriage. Years of sacrifice. She explained how they started with barely $11,000 between them. How she paid rent while Dexter built his future. How she handled reports, clients, dinners, parties, holidays, all while he slowly transferred every asset, every vehicle, every account into his name alone. Then she revealed something that made Willa May go completely still. 3 weeks before throwing her out, Dexter had secretly taken out a life insurance policy on both Abeni and the unborn baby. Abeni stared down at the tea in her hands before finally admitting the part that hurt the most. She had asked Dexter twice to put her name on the mortgage for the house on Tuckasegee Road. Twice. Both times, he smiled, kissed her forehead, and said the same thing. When the time is right. But the time was never right for her to own anything. The moment she became pregnant, everything changed. Dexter convinced her to leave her job, telling her it was best for the family. He said a child needed stability. Said his income was more than enough. Said she deserved rest. So she trusted him. And the second her paycheck disappeared, so did the version of him she thought she married. He never screamed. That was the disturbing part. Dexter weaponized calmness. At dinner, he'd casually refer to her as expensive. On phone calls with his mother, loud enough for Abeni to hear from the next room, he'd laugh and say things like, "I'm carrying this whole household myself." Little cuts. Every day. Precise. Calculated. Designed to make her question her own worth. Then came Cassandra Mills. 3 months earlier, Dexter brought her into their house on a Sunday afternoon and introduced her as a co-worker for Vanguard Crown's Southeast Division. Cassandra was polished, beautiful, confident in a way that immediately made the room feel smaller around her. At first, she visited occasionally, then every Wednesday, then Tuesdays and Wednesdays, then entire weekends. Her perfume started lingering everywhere, vanilla mixed with something cold and sharp. It seeped into couch cushions, bathroom towels, even the pillows in Abeni's bedroom. Like another woman was slowly replacing her molecule by molecule. One afternoon, Abeni found a receipt tucked inside Dexter's jacket pocket. A necklace, $4,200, purchased from a luxury jeweler on South Boulevard. She never received it. When she confronted Dexter, he leaned back in his chair and laughed softly. "You're getting paranoid," he told her. "Pregnancy hormones are making you irrational." 2 weeks later, during a brunch Dexter hosted at their own home, Abeni saw Cassandra wearing the necklace. And Cassandra knew she noticed, because while everyone else was talking, Cassandra slowly touched the pendant and smiled directly at her. Not kindly, like a warning. Abeni's voice cracked as she described the night. Everything finally exploded. At 11:15 p.m., Dexter sat her down at the kitchen table and calmly said 5 words. "This is not your home." Earlier that morning, while Abeni was at a prenatal appointment, he had already changed the locks. Her key stopped working the moment she came back. That was when she learned the truth. Her name wasn't on the deed, not on the lease, not on the car, not on anything. Even worse, Dexter had secretly moved $34,000 from their joint savings into a private account under his name only. Then he handed her a gray Samsonite suitcase, the same one she bought for their honeymoon in Savannah years ago, and told her she had 10 minutes to pack whatever fit inside. 8 months pregnant. No car. No money. No family nearby. No phone. When she asked where she was supposed to go, Dexter looked her dead in the eyes and said, "That's not my problem anymore." And the entire time, Cassandra sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for a movie to start. She never even looked up. When Abeni finished speaking, silence swallowed the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed softly in the background. Willa made it interrupt once. Didn't offer fake sympathy. Didn't say that poor thing or God will handle him. Instead, she stood slowly and disappeared into the back bedroom. A few moments later, she returned carrying an old shoebox wrapped tightly with a thick rubber band. She placed it gently on the table. Inside were 12 sealed envelopes. Yellowed tape, aged paper, careful handwriting faded with time, but still perfectly readable. The words across every envelope read, "Chidinma Ndukwu, personal recipes, not for sale." Abeni stopped breathing. For a second, the entire room tilted. "Your grandmother worked for Vanguard Crown long before your husband ever stepped inside that building," Willa May said quietly. And to this day, people still talk about her cooking like it was a religious experience. She explained how the locker had sat untouched in the basement of Building 7 for decades. During renovations 6 years earlier, she found the envelopes hidden inside. "I couldn't throw them away," Willa May admitted. Something about the handwriting felt important. Then she looked directly at Abeni. "And last night, when I opened that door and saw your face standing in the rain, I finally understood why." Abeni opened the first envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a recipe card softened by time. Groundnut soup, Chidimma's way. The instructions were detailed, almost intimate. More ginger in winter. Less tomato if the paste is too acidic. Never rush the peanuts. Always taste before the 3rd hour. The second envelope held wedding-style jollof rice. In the margin, her grandmother had written, "The burnt bottom is not the mistake. It is the reward." The third contained egusi stew. The fourth, healing pepper soup. The fifth held a suya spice blend labeled, "Chidinma's Secret." One by one, the recipes unfolded like pieces of a life Abeni thought she had lost forever. Each page smelled faintly of thyme, palm oil, and old kitchens filled with love. By the time she reached the 12th envelope, her hands were shaking too badly to open. T.S. Willa May opened it for her. Inside wasn't a recipe. It was a letter. "To whoever finds these, I am Chidinma Ndukwu. I cooked for this company for 9 years. I fed their board members, their executives, and their guests. I was never paid what my work deserved, but I gave my best anyway because that is what my mother taught me. These recipes are not for sale. They are not for people who have not earned them. If my family ever needs them, they will know what to do. And if not, let these meals feed whoever is hungry. That will be enough." Abeni broke. Not quietly, not politely. She lowered her forehead onto the kitchen table and cried harder than she had in years. Not because she was weak, because for the first time in a very long time, she felt seen. Dexter had trained her to suppress every emotion. 3 years earlier, he told her crying was manipulation. After that day, she stopped allowing herself to do it. But now the grief poured out of her like floodwater breaking through concrete. Willa May didn't rush to comfort her, didn't interrupt. She simply sat there with folded hands and let the silence hold her together until the storm finally passed. Then she said something Abeni would remember for the rest of her life. "Your grandmother left you something richer than money," she said softly. "She left you a skill nobody can steal, a name nobody can erase, and recipes powerful enough to rebuild a life from nothing." Then Willa May leaned forward slightly. "The question is whether you're finally ready to use them." Over the next 4 weeks, something inside Abeni began waking back up. At first, she cooked mechanically, almost emotionally numb. But her hands remembered what her heart was still trying to survive. Without thinking, she reached for spices at the exact right moments. Stirred pots counterclockwise the same way Chidima used to. Tasted broth with her eyes closed exactly like her grandmother had done hundreds of times before. The first thing she made was the groundnut soup. 3 full hours at the stove. Her back ached constantly. Her swollen feet burned. Twice, the baby kicked so hard she had to grip the counter to steady herself. Still, she kept cooking. The kitchen slowly filled with layered aromas. Peanuts, smoked turkey, cayenne, tomato, deep roasted spices blending together into something almost impossible to describe. It wasn't just food. It carried memory inside it. Willa May wandered into the kitchen without saying a word and sat at the table. Abeni placed a bowl in front of her. Willa May took 1 spoonful, then another. Then she closed her eyes completely. For full minutes passed before she spoke. When she finally looked up, her voice was barely above a whisper. "That," she said carefully, "isn't food." She pointed at the bowl. "That is survival." After that came the jollof rice, then the pepper soup, then the agusi stew. Each dish tasted like something resurrected, like generations refusing to disappear. And soon, people started talking. First, it was Willa May's neighbor, Opal Freeman, a retired teacher who tasted the jollof rice and immediately called her sister. Her sister told the prayer group at Mount Moriah Baptist Church. The prayer group told the choir. The choir told everybody else. And suddenly, plates started selling faster than Abeni could cook them. 22 orders the first week, 37 the second, 51 the third, 68 by week 4. Cash only. Pick up between 5 and 7. No social media. No advertising. Just word of mouth and food so unforgettable people talked about it like a secret they couldn't keep. By the end of the month, Abeni had saved $3,740 in cash inside the same shoebox that once held her grandmother's recipes. She still had no car, no insurance, no lawyer, no home of her own. But for the first time since Dexter threw her into the rain, she had something far more dangerous, a way back. What Abeni didn't realize was that Dexter had made one catastrophic mistake the night he threw her out. In his rage, while stuffing her belongings into the suitcase as fast as possible, he accidentally packed something he never intended for her to keep. A plain brown manila folder. No label. No markings. It sat buried beneath 2 maternity dresses at the bottom of the suitcase, unnoticed until days later. And inside that folder was enough evidence to destroy the entire version of reality Dexter had spent years creating. 7 years of receipts. 7 years of proof. Every sacrifice. Every payment. Every dollar she quietly poured into the life he now claimed she never contributed to. Grocery receipts from 43 client dinners she personally planned, shopped for, cooked, and served in their home while Dexter entertained business partners like a king. $8,917. Paid from her personal Bank of America account. Utility payments from the years when his salary couldn't keep up with their bills. 26 straight months. $14,300. Car insurance payments on the Audi Q7 he now drove around Charlotte, pretending he built everything himself. $6,200 over 4 years. 3 separate payments toward his Howard University student loans before refinancing approved him. $4,500. The $2,100 security deposit for their first apartment on Remount Road, paid entirely from the dental office paycheck he later acted embarrassed by. Then came the W-2 forms. 3 straight years. $41,000 annually. More than $123,000 earned while Dexter built his empire. Line after line. Year after year. Dates. Amounts. Canceled checks. Paper trails. Evidence. The entire folder felt less like financial records and more like a witness finally speaking. Chidinma used to tell her something when she was young. Always keep your receipts. Not for taxes. For truth. Dexter had called her deadweight. The folder told a very different story. And the most unbelievable part, he had handed the evidence to her himself. In 14 months of secretly planning her removal, moving money, changing locks, rewriting narratives, rehearsing lies, Dexter never once opened that folder. Never looked at a single page. Never imagined the quiet woman he underestimated had documented everything. That mistake was about to cost him far more than money. 3 weeks before her due date, the situation nearly collapsed all over again. Abeni went to Atrium Health Mercy Hospital on Vale Avenue for a prenatal checkup. She had no insurance, no identification, no wallet. Dexter had locked her driver's license inside the fireproof safe at the house before throwing her out, and in the chaos of that night, she never thought to grab it. At the intake desk, a young nurse scanned her clipboard with visible impatience. No ID, no insurance information, no appointment verification, she said flatly. We can't process you. Abeni didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't beg. She simply sat down in the waiting room and folded her hands over her stomach and waited. 40 minutes passed. People came and went around her. A little boy burning with fever. A construction worker clutching a swollen wrist. A woman wheeled through the hallway, struggling to breathe. Nobody noticed the heavily pregnant woman sitting alone in oversized house slippers with no purse, no coat, and nowhere else to go. Then, at exactly 3:17 p.m., a hospital social worker named Yolanda Price walked through the waiting room on her way to a staff meeting. And something about Abeni stopped her cold. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was the exhaustion in her eyes. Or maybe Yolanda had seen enough abandoned women to recognize one instantly. She walked over slowly. Are you waiting for someone? She asked gently. Abeni looked up. I'm waiting to be seen, she said quietly. But I don't have my identification. Yolanda sat beside her immediately. Not across from her. Beside her. She asked a few simple questions. Name. Weeks pregnant. Where she was staying. And when Abeni calmly explained what happened, without dramatics, without tears, without try-perform or pain, Yolanda stood up before she even finished speaking. She made 2 phone calls from the hallway. The first call went to patient advocacy. 20 minutes later, Abeni was in an examination room receiving care. The second call changed everything. It was to a family attorney named Denise Okafor Banks from a nonprofit called Second Door Charlotte. Denise had handled dozens of cases involving financial abuse, illegal lockouts, and coercive control during pregnancy. And the second she heard Abeni's story, she recognized the pattern immediately. Within 72 hours, Denise filed 3 separate motions with Mecklenburg County Family Court. Emergency spousal support, a temporary restraining order based on financial abuse and unlawful eviction during pregnancy, and a motion to freeze the marital assets Dexter secretly transferred into personal accounts. But Dexter had already prepared for war. His attorney, Lawrence Kemp, expensive, polished, ruthless, filed a counterpetition almost immediately. And suddenly, the entire story flipped. According to Dexter's legal filing, Abeni left voluntarily. According to Dexter, she was emotionally unstable throughout the pregnancy. According to Dexter, she chose financial dependency and refused to work. And worst of all, Cassandra Mills signed a formal witness statement backing every lie. She claimed Abeni packed calmly, claimed nobody forced her out, claimed there was no lockout, no abuse, no abandonment, just a dramatic woman who decided to leave. For 3 terrifying days, it worked. Dexter's story looked clean, organized, professional. Abeni's truth looked messy by comparison. No police report, no video footage, no recordings, no text messages, no phone. Even the one witness who could have helped, a retired postal worker named Gerald Hayes across the street, refused to get involved. He had seen Dexter throw the suitcase onto the sidewalk, seen the entire thing. But fear won. Gerald told his wife he didn't see anything, locked his door, and stayed silent. And just like that, Abeni felt herself disappearing again. For 3 straight days, she sat in Willa May's kitchen feeling invisible. Not believed, not protected, not counted. The legal system listened more carefully to the man with money than the woman carrying his child. Dexter's lies were neat. Her truth was painful, and the world usually preferred neat. For the first time since arriving at Willa May's house, Abeni considered giving up. Not on the baby, not on cooking, on fighting. She thought about letting Dexter erase her completely, quietly, cleanly, exactly the way he intended. But then her eyes landed on the shoebox sitting above the stove. The recipes, the letter, the words her grandmother left behind. If my family ever needs them, they will know what to do. Something inside her hardened. So instead of quitting, she tied on an apron and went back to the stove. Willa May watched from across the kitchen without saying a word, because she knew something Abeni didn't yet know. The tide was already turning, and the person about to change everything was sitting quietly behind a desk at Vanguard Crown Holdings. Pauline Achebe, the records clerk, 53 years old, reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck. African violets sitting beside perfectly organized stacks of files. The kind of woman nobody noticed until it was too late. For 6 weeks, Pauline had been quietly digging through company records after hours. Not because anyone told her to, because she had spent 3 years watching Dexter operate like a man who believed rules were for other people. And men like that always leave fingerprints somewhere. Pauline found expense reports for client dinners that never happened. Restaurant receipts submitted on nights the buildings were completely closed. Property inspection reimbursements filed while Dexter was golfing at Quail Hollow. Then she uncovered something worse. Small missing amounts buried across multiple maintenance budgets. $1,200 here. $3,400 there. Vendor payments to companies that didn't exist. Contractor invoices tied to a P.O. box registered under Dexter's middle name. Over 3 years, the missing money totaled nearly $87,000. And Pauline finally realized something terrifying. Dexter hadn't just been lying to his wife. He had been stealing from Vanguard Crown the entire time. Pauline Achebe never called the media. She never contacted bloggers, gossip pages, or allowed relatives looking for drama. She called the one person inside Vanguard Crown Holdings whose entire job depended on uncovering fraud before it exploded publicly. The company's internal compliance officer. Her voice stayed calm when he answered. She gave him 3 file numbers and said only one sentence. You need to look at these. The audit began quietly the following Tuesday morning. No announcement, no warning emails, no emergency meetings. Just 2 compliance investigators and a forensic accountant silently pulling records from storage while the office carried on like nothing was wrong. By Thursday afternoon, they already knew enough to panic. Dexter discovered the investigation at exactly 4:22 p.m. He walked toward the front entrance of Building 7 on North Tryon Street, carrying a leather briefcase and talking on Bluetooth about a property acquisition deal. Then he swiped his badge. Red light. He frowned and tried again. Red light. A third swipe. Nothing. That was when the security guard approached him. A tall man named Marcus. For 4 years, Marcus had opened doors for Dexter every morning. Good morning, Mr. Osei. Have a good evening, Mr. Osei. Hundreds of greetings. Thousands of moments where Dexter walked straight past him without once asking his name. Now Marcus stood in front of him and calmly said 7 words. Mr. Osei, you are not authorized to enter. Dexter laughed once in disbelief and swiped the badge again. Red light. Then he looked up at Marcus. And for the first time, he saw absolutely no warmth in the man's face. No anger either. No sympathy. Nothing. Marcus looked at him the exact same way Dexter had looked at Abeni the night he threw her into the rain, like someone already erased from the system. That was the moment fear finally entered Dexter's body. Not guilt, not regret, fear, because suddenly the machine he spent years controlling was moving without him. And worse, it was moving against him. By Friday morning, Vanguard Crown suspended Dexter without pay pending investigation. By Monday, a courier arrived at his house to collect the company laptop, phone, and parking pass. The courier didn't make conversation, didn't apologize, didn't even step fully inside, just took the items and left. Then things got worse. On Wednesday afternoon, Lawrence Kemp, the expensive attorney who had aggressively defended Dexter in court, officially withdrew from the case. No explanation, no warning, just a withdrawal notice filed with Mecklenburg County Court. After that, Dexter's calls went unanswered. The hearing took place Thursday morning inside courtroom 4B at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Abeni arrived wearing a simple pressed dress Willa May had ironed before sunrise. Dexter arrived alone, unshaven, exhausted, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Denise Okafor Banks stood calmly beside Abeni and placed the manila folder onto the table. Then she began presenting the evidence piece by piece. Slowly, methodically, almost gently. Every grocery receipt, every canceled check, every utility payment, every bank transfer, every sacrifice Abeni quietly made while Dexter built the image of himself as a self-made man. $8,917 for client dinners, $14,300 in utilities, $6,200 in insurance payments, $4,500 towards student loans, $2,100 for their first apartment, $123,000 earned while supporting his rise. The courtroom became so quiet, even papers turning sounded loud. Judge Harold Whitfield reviewed the documents for 11 straight minutes without speaking, page after page, note after note. Finally, he removed his glasses and looked directly at Dexter. Then he issued the ruling. Emergency spousal support, $3,200 per month. Immediate possession of the marital home granted to Abeni. A restraining order requiring Dexter to vacate the property within 48 hours. And a full forensic review of all marital assets transferred during the previous 18 months. Dexter didn't move. Not immediately. For 6 full minutes, he sat frozen at the defense table staring at nothing. His hands flat, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the wall. He had spent over a year carefully stripping Abeni of everything. And in the end, the single thing that destroyed him was the suitcase he packed himself. Because buried inside that suitcase was the truth he never bothered to check. The receipts. 14 months later, on a cold Saturday morning in December, a small restaurant opened on West Trade Street in Charlotte's West End. 28 seats, white brick walls, warm hanging lights, an open kitchen where customers could smell onions, garlic, cayenne, and slow-cooked spices the second they walked through the door. Above the entrance hung a wooden sign carved by hand. Chidinma's table. At 6:15 that morning, Abeni stood inside the kitchen with her daughter strapped gently against her chest in a cloth carrier. The baby's name was Adaze Chidinma Duckwill, 11 months old, big, curious eyes like her mother. Her great-grandmother's name. She slept peacefully through the sound of oil crackling on the stove. The very first customer walked in at exactly 7 a.m. Opal Freeman, wearing church clothes on a Saturday. She ordered the groundnut soup. Abeni served it carefully without saying much. Opal ate slowly, tearing bread into tiny pieces and dipping each one into the broth. When the bowl was finally empty, she placed the spoon down and looked at Abeni with watery eyes. Chidinma would be proud, she said softly. Then she smiled, and she'd still tell you the soup needed 1 more minute. Abeni laughed so suddenly and freely it surprised even her. It was the first real laugh she had released in years. The restaurant exploded after that. By the 3rd month, Friday and Saturday nights had waiting lists. By month 6, the Charlotte Observer published a full-page feature titled, "The Recipes That Survived." By month 9, Abeni hired 3 cooks and a front-of-house manager named Kofi Mensah. But she ran the restaurant differently than the places she remembered. Every employee earned above-market pay. Health insurance started immediately. The restaurant closed Sundays and Mondays so staff could rest. Because Chidinma standards were never just about food. They were about dignity. Every Wednesday at exactly 12:30 p.m., Willa Mae Saunders walked through the front door and sat at table 3 beside the window. She never ordered, never opened a menu, never paid $1. Abeni refused to let her. Willa Mae always said the same thing. Surprise me. And every week, Abeni did. But the most important thing to come from Chidinma's table wasn't the success. It was what happened afterward. Every second Saturday of the month, Abeni closed the restaurant to the public and opened the kitchen to women rebuilding their lives. The program was called Second Kitchen. Women abandoned by husbands. Women escaping abuse. Women surviving poverty. Women who knew exactly what it felt like to become invisible. Abeni taught them more than recipes. She taught them value. She taught them precision. She taught them pride. And every class began with the exact same sentence her grandmother once taught her. Nothing leaves this kitchen unless it's the best thing that person eats this month. Lives started changing. One woman, named Farida Johnson, arrived with a bruised eye, a bus transfer in her pocket, and a little girl who spent the class drawing pictures of houses she wished they lived in. A year later, Farida ran a successful lunch catering business, serving 3 office buildings in uptown Charlotte. Every Thursday, she sold groundnut soup with a waiting list attached to it. Another woman, Tanya Rowe, started selling sweet potato pies across Mecklenburg County farmers markets. When reporters asked her what Abeni taught first, she didn't mention cooking. She repeated one sentence. You are not starting over. You are starting from everything you already know. On the wall beside the kitchen pass-through at Chidinma's table hangs a black and white photograph. A woman in an apron stands inside a commercial kitchen with her hands on her hips, staring directly into the camera. Not smiling, not apologizing, just present, certain, unforgettable. Below the photograph, engraved into a brass plate, are the words, Chidinma, Ndukwu, 1947 to 2013, she fed everyone. She forgot no one. As for Dexter Osei, the audit confirmed nearly $87,000 in fraudulent expense claims and fabricated vendor payments. Vanguard Crown terminated him immediately. The company avoided criminal charges to prevent public scandal, but his real estate license was suspended pending investigation by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. Clients quietly pulled away. Business relationships disappeared. And one by one, the carefully built image he protected for years collapsed without anyone needing to shout about it. Cassandra Mills left Charlotte 2 weeks after the ruling. No goodbye, no forwarding address, no dramatic ending. Just gone. And Abeni? She never spoke publicly about Dexter, never posted revenge stories online, never stood in front of cameras describing the night she was abandoned in the rain. She didn't have to. The evidence spoke. The court documents spoke. The restaurant spoke every single night people sat at her tables tasting recipes that survived hidden inside a basement locker for 31 years, waiting to find their rightful hands again. And every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m., when Willa Mae sat at table 3 and Abeni joined her for a few quiet minutes before the lunch rush began, they often said very little. Sometimes silence tells the truth better than words ever can. Because there comes a moment in every life when the world decides whether to truly see you or erase you. For Abeni, that moment came standing barefoot in the rain beneath a stranger's porch light. And for one terrifying second, the world almost looked away. But what Dexter never understood was this. You can lock someone out of a house. You can take their money. You can rewrite the story to make yourself look innocent. But you cannot erase what a person carries in their hands, especially when those hands were built through survival. People like Abeni do not rise because life was easy for them. They rise because pain taught them how to build from nothing. And once they finally stand again, they become something nobody can ever control twice. Dexter believed he left her with nothing that night. But in reality, he left her with everything she needed. Her truth, her name, her grandmother's legacy, And the moment he shut that door and turned off the porch light, he unknowingly walked out of the last chapter where he had any power at all. Because while he was busy trying to erase her, Abeni was already walking toward the life waiting for her. A life where she would never beg to be seen again. A life where people lined up outside her restaurant just to taste what survived inside her hands. A life where her daughter would grow up knowing exactly who her mother was and exactly what she overcame. Abeni Ndukwu was never a burden. She was the foundation. And foundations don't disappear. They rebuild. They rise. And eventually, they become everything.